It was a day like any other. I was playing My Singing Monsters on my seasonal shanty, and I had just placed down a Yool. I was excited to finally hear its addition to the song, but when I placed him down, it wouldn't play. Even after the whole song repeated, it just wouldn't start. So I thought it might just be a glitch like usual. So I went to another island and went back in, but it still wouldn't play. Okay, this is weird, I thought. So I tried reopening the game to fix it, but when I went back to the seasonal shanty, my Yool was gone! I thought that my game just glitched out really badly, and I was really upset because I'd gone through the whole process of teleporting it and waiting for it to incubate. I went back to my cold island to teleport it again, but there was no Yool there either. I checked in the shop, but Yool wasn't available, which was weird since there was supposed to be a promotion for it. I looked in the monster book, and Yool wasn't there either. This was super weird, so I made a support ticket to the monster handlers so they would fix it. I closed the game for the day and went to bed, still very confused about what happened. The next morning, when I woke up, I checked my email and saw that the monster handlers responded. Sorry about that. There have been weird things going on with Yool recently. It should be fixed now. Great, I thought. So I went back to check on MSM to see if they actually fixed it. To my surprise, the game would not open at all. Whenever I clicked play on Steam, it just refused to start. I'd guessed that it must be a problem with me, so I checked the files on my computer. Then, I soon noticed that all of the files for MSM were gone, except for one, Yool.exe. My initial thought was that it must have been a prank from the monster handlers. Surely it wasn't anything sinister, right? Unfortunately, I was wrong. When I opened the file, my entire computer crashed completely. This really got me worried. Could a hacker have taken over MSM? Were the files gone forever? I was terrified of losing my MSM save after all the time I'd spent on it, so I decided to check on my phone to see if anyone else had the same issue. Much to my surprise, nobody seemed to be talking about it. There were no YouTube videos, no posts, nothing on the wiki, just nothing. I thought this was really strange since the monster handlers responded to me when I asked them about it. Was it really just a hacker that had been messing with me? Just then, my computer finally restarted and everything seemed to be working fine. So, I cautiously opened up Steam and tapped to play My Singing Monsters, and it worked. I guess it really was just a really bad glitch. Or so I thought. After hours of playing random games, still too nervous to open MSM, I noticed something. My web camera had been on the whole time, and there were no apps or anything open that would make it turn on. Someone was watching me. I quickly turned off my computer and ran straight to bed. What was I going to do? My computer had clearly been hacked and someone is watching me. I decided to call the police, but I only got their voicemail. I tried to call everyone I knew, they were too busy. Running out of ideas, I made a critical mistake. I looked up Yool.exe on my phone. Instantly, my phone glitched out and shut down. I tried everything I could to turn it back on, but it would not work. Just as I had given up all my hope, my computer turned back on. I tippy-toed over, expecting the worst, when I saw a single file available, Yool.exe. I had no choice. I decided to open the file. Instead of crashing everything, I instead opened up My Singing Monsters. At first I was confused, but that confusion soon turned to horror. The seasonal shanty was covered in dark red blood, and the only monster there was Yool. But it was different. It was much darker and scarier, with big eyes and blood dripping down him. His song was different too. Instead of saying hoo hoo hoo, it said die, die, die. I was so scared, I ran out of my room and into the bathroom. Why would someone do this? I began to cry, throw up, and pee all over the place when I heard something outside the door. It was the sound of sleigh bells and an ominous voice repeating, die, die, die. Oh my god, Yool escaped the computer was in my house. I panicked not knowing what to do. Die, die, die. The voice grew louder as I approached my door. I looked to the window with no other option, jumped out of it. Out of my window and into a tree and then fell to the ground. When I recovered, something was wrong. The sky was red, the trees had lost all their leaves, and there were sounds of gunshots everywhere. When I ran around to the front of my house, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. There were big evil Yools everywhere, eating people, destroying houses, and just shooting up the place. Just then, the military swooped down with loads of troops and started to fight the Yools. Not wanting to be useless, I grabbed a gun and started gunning down as many as I could. The Yools were tough and could take a lot of bullets. Little by little, the troops were being picked off. I felt so guilty. I had caused all this. I had let the Yools out into the wild, and now they were killing everyone. A military captain shouted at the remaining troops, "We can't make it. Everyone get on board these helicopters." And so we all clambered in and took off. As we were flying through the sky, something hit our helicopter. As I looked down the window, I saw a massive swarm of buzzingas. On each of them was a Yool, carrying all big guns, shooting at us. This was really bad. Really bad. Our helicopter had taken another critical blow, and we began to fall. After a long fall, we all crashed into a strange place. There were truffula trees everywhere, and the barbaloots and swimming swans and humming fish. It was quite the sight. We decided to set up camp here since the bazingas seemed to not be around here. Since we needed fire, we decided to cut down a truffula tree, and much to our surprise, out popped a small furry orange man. "I'm the Lorax," he said, "and I speak for the trees, and I'll tell you all something. You gotta leave." "But why?" I asked. "We have nowhere else to go, and the bazingas don't seem to know about this place." The Lorax responded, "Oh, that's right. They don't know yet, but just wait a day, and they'll be here in cents. They got you on their trackers, on radars, on maps, and they won't stop till you're dead in their traps." I was astonished. What were they tracking me for? What did I do to deserve this? But wait, how would the Lorax know this? "Hey buddy," I said, "how do you know all this?" "I'm the Lorax, and I speak for the trees, and the trees know everything from north, west, and east. They knew this was coming. They know all the lore. They know of the Yools and this cold, rotten war." "But how do you know they want me?" "I speak for the trees, and the trees speak to me. And the trees here tell me you set the Yools free." He was right. I did set them free. It was all my fault. If only I had not placed down that Yool, none of this would have happened. "What should I do, Mr. Lorax?" Before he could respond, a giant flash of light blinded me, and before I could tell what happened, I heard an unfamiliar voice. "Arvin, I'm a kid in the flesh," it said. Who are you?" I demanded. "What I am is not important, but most refer to me as the G-Man." "The G-Man?" I was astonished. I had heard of someone like this before, but only in the legend. "What are you doing here?" "You have made quite the mess, Mr. I'm a Kid," he exhaled. "A mess that my E-employers have taken a particular interest in. So, they have tasked me with delivering you directions." "Directions?" I asked. "Directions for what?" For reversing this disaster," he answered. "This event greatly compromises our ability to maintain, if you will, the timeline. And since this event couldn't be foreseen, we ask of you for assistance." "Oh, I'll do anything to reverse this, Mr. G-Man," I said. He smiled. "Excellent choice, Mr. I'm a Kid. Then allow me to relay you your task." The G-Man made my mission perfectly clear. I had to travel across the 7 seas to each continent, collecting a Chaos Emerald at the capital of each. Fortunately, he also gave me a magic talking boat, and so he set sail. "Well, Bodhi," I said, "where are we off to first?" "Well, Captain," Bodhi replied, "since you appear to have crashed somewhere around New York, it would be wise to head towards the capital of North America." "Which is?" I asked. "St. Kitts and Nevis, of course." "Duh, how could I forget the most important country in North America?" So, we began our journey to St. Kitts and Nevis, and arrived in a few minutes. But, when we got there, it was an all-out war. As far as the eye could see, there were Yools everywhere, destroying everything and killing everyone. "Well, Bodhi, I'm gonna have to leave you for a while. Wish me luck." "Good luck, Captain," he shouted as I ran further into St. Kitts, the island that supposedly housed the first Chaos Emerald. After dodging and jumping through gunfire, I finally made it to the middle, where a massive temple loomed over. At the very top, I saw a faint glow. A Chaos Emerald. I started to run up the steps, but to my horror, a Yool had just landed its bazinga at the top, and it was about to grab the emerald. As I got to the top, I saw that the Yool had the Chaos Emerald and was about to smash it. There was no way I could reach it in time, but just then, something swooped down from the sky and grabbed the emerald right off the Yool's hands. "The dandy-do?" I gasped. "Do-dee-do," replied, as his side kicked the Yool off the temple. "Oh, dandy-do, thank goodness you're here." I felt like crying when dandy-do said. "You're right," I replied. "We have to hurry." And so we rushed back to Bodhi and took off for the next continent, South America. On our journey, I decided to ask Dandy-Do why they were helping me and not the Yool. They could only reply in do's and de's, but I understood every word they said. Long ago, Cold Island was a harmonious place of peace. Every monster sung and danced with joy, and they couldn't be happier. This was until Yool arrived and demanded to be held above everyone, as it was a seasonal. Since it played the most during seasonal shanty, it believed it was the best monster on the island, and that it would not be the best monster on every island. Not wanting to cause trouble, the rest of the monsters reluctantly agreed and bowed down to their new king. The reign of Yool was a horrible one. It forced monsters to dress up in stupid festive outfits and blast bad Christmas music 24/7. Things only got worse on Gold Island when it forced all the other seasonals to let Yool visit the islands, making a mess of the place, and leaving before anyone could say anything. The monsters had had enough, and they all banded together to overthrow Yool. Things were going well. The rebels had made many secret trips to steal from Yool's vault of treasure. However, during one of these trips, Dandy-Doo had an idea. It figured that the best way to get rid of Yool was to remove it from the game, so Dandy-Doo hacked my singing monsters in an attempt to remove it. However, while it was doing this, Yool snuck up behind them and captured them, changing the code they were writing. Fortunately, Yool accidentally got itself trapped in a single executable file on some random person's save. Unfortunately, however, that Yool was placed down and set free, and it had been ready. After hearing this story, I felt an immense amount of guilt, but how was I supposed to know that my save was corrupted with the evil Yool? But there was no time to think about that now, since we had just landed at Brazil. Wasteland. What was once a shining, bright capital of the future now lay a desolate pile of rubble. Fortunately, there didn't seem to be any Yools around here. As we waved goodbye to Bodhi, Dandy-Doo and I trekked deeper inland. According to G-Man, the next Chaos Emerald was underneath the Christ the Redeemer statue. So we started our journey. As we were walking, I asked Dandy-Doo why the Bazingas were helping the Yools instead of fighting them. He told me that since Bazingas have multiversal travel, they were a target of the Yools since they first met each other. After Yool had gotten trapped in the file, it started to make some code if it would ever be freed. The code would duplicate itself 1,000 trillion times, as well as alter the behavior of the Bazingas to do whatever the Yools would say. Wow, I said, surprised. But wait, if the Bazingas have multiversal travel, then does that mean? Then you knew exactly what I was thinking. They explained to me that every single universe and every single planet was being invaded by thousands of Yools at once. This is why it was so important that they assembled the Chaos Emeralds in reverse time. I asked Dandy-Doo how they knew all this stuff. They told me that G-Man had visited them as well and had assigned them with assisting me. If the G-Man had really assigned 2 people at once, then his employers must really not want this. It makes you wonder why they couldn't foresee this happening. I mean, they could foresee anything, right? So why not this? As we finished talking, we saw on the horizon what was left of Christ the Redeemer. His entire upper half was blown off, leaving alone a small amount of the legs. What a shame this could have happened to such a beautiful landmark. We looked around the base of the statue, but couldn't find anything that could lead us under. That is, until we checked the inside of the legs. Sure enough, it was completely hollow, and there was a passage going deeper underground. When we reached the bottom, what was there shocked us. It was a whole tavern overrun by Yools. We decided to try to sneak around them, but one of the Yools caught us and threw us in the middle of the bar. The Yools surrounded us, and with nowhere to run, there was only one option: to fight. Fortunately, I graduated top of my class in the Navy SEALs, and I was a master at the martial arts. Using my raw talent, I chopped several Yools clean in half. Meanwhile, Dandy-Doo was kicking and pecking their eyes out, and in no time all the Yools were dead on the floor. We went around the back of the bar and found the Chaos Emerald inside a crate, and we began to crawl back out of the statue. As we emerged, it was very dark, and it was starting to rain. So we went back inside and decided to make a bed out of the Yools. It wasn't perfect, but it was comfortable. Dandy-Doo fell asleep very fast, but I had more trouble falling asleep. I couldn't help but think what could have happened here at Brazil to leave it in such ruin. And to think, if there were really bazillions of Yools and they could each travel to every universe in existence, what kind of carnage could be unfolding as we sleep? And all this was because of me. My eyelids started to grow heavy, and soon a deep sleep came over me. When I woke up, Dandy-Doo had made us both Yool soup, and it was very delicious. After we finished eating, we left the statue, and soon arrived at Buddy, ready to make our way to Africa. While sailing to Africa, we saw dozens and dozens of Bazingas flying overhead, each carrying a Yool. They were all headed to Africa, possibly for the Chaos Emerald. "We better go faster," I told Bodhi. "Captain, if we go any faster, they'll notice us," Bodhi replied. But before I could say something back, a massive burst of water exploded in front of us, knocking Dandy-Doo and I off Bodhi. We both struggled to swim back to the surface, but when we did, we saw tons of Bazingas dive bombing Bodhi. "No! Bodhi!" I cried, unable to hold back tears, and when all of a sudden, everything went dark. Instead of in the water, we appeared to be now inside a massive mouth. As I banged on the strange teeth, they made a weird sound, almost like a string instrument. Dandy-Doo assured me that a bowhead has followed us up and was carrying us to safety. I breathed a sigh of relief, but then asked, "How did all these other monsters get here?" Dandy-Doo told me that when Yool was released, the game was shattered and all of the monsters were released as well. Dandy-Doo told me that before splitting up, the rebels agreed to help out whenever they could, even though most of them are somewhere in hiding. "Who's in resistance?" I asked. Dandy-Doo claimed everyone except Yool and Bazinga. I guess we'll see them later on the road. Wait, what's gonna happen to Bodhi? Dandy-Doo was quiet. I knew that that meant, but I didn't want to believe it. I struggled to hold back tears, but when Dandy-Doo hugged me, they all gushed out and soaked its pus. Dandy-Doo reassured me and told me that everything was gonna be alright. With the rebels on our side, there was nothing that could stop us. I felt much better. Even though I would miss Bodhi, Dandy-Doo made me feel safe and comfortable. I would not be able to do this without them. Just then, Bowhead opened his mouth and we stepped out. After we waved Bowhead off, we headed further into Africa, although something was different. There was no destruction, no Yools, and no Bazingas. I asked a local what was up, and they told me that we were in Wakanda, and that a force shield had been put around this continent to protect everyone. The force field was getting weaker, and it couldn't last forever. I asked them where the Chaos Emerald was, and they pointed to a large building that appeared to be the power source of the force field. As we went inside, the emerald was clear at the top, but in order to get it, we would have to go through hell. Inside of the tower, there was a long series of rooms with floating platforms, lasers, conveyor belts, and more. In order to reach the emerald, we would have to climb a tower of hell. We started with the first floor. Nothing too hard. Just a few simple jumps over some kill bricks. Pretty standard obby so far. We continued until about the 10th floor when moving platforms got thrown in, and again, nothing too hard. Until the 20th, when conveyor belts were added. Things continued like this until the very last level when we had to do a conveyor wrap jump. What do you mean was this? The floor was obviously the hardest one, and anyone who says otherwise isn't remembering properly. We made it the final jump. We were both about to make it when a loud boom shocked us both, and we fell to the very bottom. Now wanting to do the whole thing again, Dandy Doo called upon some help from the rebellion. In flew Quibble, who carried us to a top in a flash. Truly a skilled flyer. What a hero. As we grabbed the emerald from its cell, the ceiling opened up, revealing that the emerald had been powering the force field. With no other choice, we took the emerald and hopped on Quibble, flying as fast as we could away from the Bazingas and towards Europe. I tried not to look back, but I couldn't help it. When I did, I saw thousands of Yools destroying the whole country, but it was too late. We were already miles away in the air, now on our way to the next emerald. Europe, Quibble saw a butterfly and got distracted, so it crashed straight into a Bazinga. As Quibble plummeted straight down, it regained its consciousness and swooped down for Dandy Doo, aiming for me next. Just then, the Bazinga swooped in, and I was grabbed by its Yool, and before I knew it, I was being whisked away to another universe. When we arrived, they led me through a monster prison and removed all my emeralds. With no weapons and no companions, there was nothing I could do. They soon threw me in a cell and told me to wait here for the boss. I had no idea what that meant, so I sat there in agony for what felt like years. Then, finally, a Yool guard led me out of the cell and into a large room. In the middle, there was a massive Yool with all the Chaos Emeralds. "You would meet us last, Arvin, I'm a kid," the massive Yool spoke. "I must say, I'm very grateful for your services. My original plan was to launch a full-on invasion in the monster universe, but after you so kindly free us, it became clear that we could do no more. And even more still, with the help of these Chaos Emeralds, how kind of you to gather so many for us. Finding the others was not an easy task. Ho, 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 ho." "No!" I screamed. "What are you gonna do with them?" "Ho, ho, 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 ho," it laughed. With these emeralds, I can obtain true power. No longer am I limited to this reality. I have finally been able to truly reign everything forever. "No, no, no, no," I cried. I have to think of something. Anything. Just then, I heard a loud cry. Quibble swooped into the room with none other than Dandy Doo on its back. Dandy Doo jumped off and landed straight in front of King Yool. "Ho, ho, ho, ho," the king laughed. "What could you possibly do to stop me?" "Doo-dee-doo," whispered Dandy Doo. Before King Yool could reply, hundreds and hundreds of monsters crashed through the windows. There were barbs, Uducks, Tuskies, Jamborees, Brumps, and so many more as far as the eye could see. King Yool was flabbergasted. "Impossible!" it yelled. How could all of you... No matter. I have no power of my awesome Chaos Emeralds, so feel my wrath. The emeralds began to circle around the king. They became faster and faster, going brighter and brighter. Then, a giant beam of light flashed across the room, annihilating everything in its path. But the monsters were quick, and managed to avoid the path and lost themselves into Yool. Unfortunately, the power of their emeralds shot them back, and their efforts proved futile. I decided that I couldn't just sit there and do nothing, so I hopped on Quibble's back with Dandy Doo and flew up while Yool was distracted. As we were thinking of something, the king turned to us enraged. "Are you betraying me, Arvin? After everything you've done for us, you decided to backstab us and try to stop me? Well, Mr. I'm a kid, I'm afraid you just don't have the power to do that." It laughed as it readied the Chaos Emeralds into a giant, fatal beam of energy. This was it. After everything I've done, after all the places we visited, all the people we've met, this is right where it ended. But Dandy Doo wouldn't expect that. Right as the beam was about to go off, Dandy Doo jumped into the center and took control of the emeralds, knocking the king backwards. "Hey!" it boomed. "Stop that!" The king lunged straight into the ring of emeralds, causing the ring to break. As this happened, a massive amount of energy was released and nearly blinded everyone in the room. When I recovered, I saw Yool strangling Dandy Doo to death. "No!" I screamed, unable to watch. Just then, I noticed the emeralds laying on the ground, and I quickly gathered them up. "Hey, king!" I shouted. "Watch this!" The king Yool turned to look at me as I prepared the Chaos Emeralds. "No!" it yelled, but it was too late. Using the emeralds, I had opened a portal back to the past before this thing began. In a quick and impulsive move, the king threw Dandy Doo into the portal as I stepped in, sealing the portal and his fate. It was a dizzying and sickening experience, but finally I landed on the other side in my bedroom, the day of the incident. There lay a Yool egg in my seasonal shanty nursery, just like how I remember it. I instantly sold the egg. The game glitched out for a few seconds, but then everything returned to normal. Yool seemed to have been completely removed. It wasn't in the shop, but the book of monsters, there weren't even any posts about it online. I'd done it. I prevented the Yool apocalypse, but it wasn't really me. It was Dandy Doo. Wait, where was Dandy Doo? I looked everywhere, but I couldn't find them, until I heard a pathetic doo coming from my bedroom. I checked again, and I saw Dandy Doo lying there on the floor, dying. Dandy, please don't leave me. Doo, doo, it sang for one last time before dying in my arms. After crying for a solid 6 hours, I buried Dandy Doo in my backyard and resumed my daily MS session. Just another average Thursday.